Captain Zarath had seen many species across the galaxy. She had witnessed the crystalline Vexani who could manipulate matter with thought alone. Lovell. She had traded with the gaseous Nephilim who existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She had even negotiated peace treaties with the hive mind collective, whose single consciousness spanned entire star systems. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the moment she watched a lone human mother lift a 2-ton transport vehicle with her bare hands to save her trapped child. The readings on her scanner were impossible. No biological enhancement, no technological assistance, no genetic modification. Just raw, impossible determination, and something her species had no word for, something humans called adrenaline. As she watched the human female collapse afterward, her child safe in her arms, Zarath realized that perhaps the Galactic Council had been asking the wrong question all along. It wasn't whether humans were dangerous, it was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready for what they were capable of when pushed to their limits. The transmission to the Council would have to wait. Right now, she had a feeling she was about to witness something that would change everything they thought they knew about the species they had dismissed as primitive emotional beings. The distress signal had just appeared on her long-range sensors. The collector ship, one of the most feared predator vessels in known space, was heading straight for the human colony world below. Zarath was about to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, the morning sun, cast long shadows across New Terra's agricultural district when the first signs appeared. Birds fell silent. Livestock huddled together in corners of their pens, trembling. Even the insects seemed to vanish, leaving an unnatural quiet that made veteran farmer Marcus Chen pause mid-stride as he walked towards his grain silos. 47 years on this frontier world had taught him to read the signs. Animals always knew first. His weathered hands moved instinctively to the comm device on his belt as he scanned the pale morning sky. "Control, this is Farm Sector 7. Marcus spoke into the device, his voice steady despite the chill running down his spine. "Something's got the animals spooked. Might want to check the sensor nets." The response crackled back immediately. "Copy that, Marcus. We're seeing some unusual readings on the outer perimeter. Probably just a solar flare affecting the wildlife. Keep your comm open." But Marcus had lived long enough to know the difference between solar flares and something else. Something worse. 3 kilometers away, in the Colonial Administration Building, Director Sarah Kim was having a very different morning. The quantum communication array had been buzzing with priority transmissions from the Galactic Council monitoring station in orbit. Captain Zarath of the scientific vessel Peaceful Observer had requested permission to establish a temporary observation post on the planet's surface. Humanitarian research, the alien captain had called it. Sarah found that term both amusing and slightly insulting. Most galactic species viewed humans as barely civilized primitives who had stumbled into space travel through sheer luck rather than advancement. Their request to study human colonies usually involved watching from a safe distance while making notes about their fascinating but dangerous emotional responses. Sarah was reviewing the approval paperwork when her aide, Lieutenant Tommy Rodriguez, burst through her office door without knocking. "Director, we need to evacuate." "Now." The tone in his voice made Sarah's blood freeze. Tommy was a veteran of the Titan mining conflicts, not someone who scared easily. "What's happening?" "Collector ship just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. It's heading straight for us." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. The collectors were living nightmares made real. A species that harvested other intelligent beings for purposes no one fully understood. They didn't kill quickly. They didn't negotiate. They simply took what they wanted, leaving behind empty colonies and psychological trauma that lasted generations. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked, already moving toward the emergency protocols cabinet. "Best estimate? 6 hours before they reach planetary orbit. Maybe 8, if they stop to scan first." Sarah's mind raced through the mathematics of evacuation. New Terra had 58,000 colonists spread across 12 major settlements. Their fastest transport ships could maybe evacuate 3,000 people per trip, and each round trip to the nearest safe system would take 14 hours minimum. "We can't get everyone out," she said quietly. "No, ma'am, we can't." The evacuation sirens began wailing across New Terra 20 minutes later. But Sarah knew, as did every colonial administrator who had studied the reports, that evacuation was just the first step. Someone would have to stay behind to buy time for the transports to escape. Someone would have to face the collectors. In the agricultural district, Marcus Chen heard the sirens and felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't experienced since the war. It was the calm that came before making impossible decisions. He walked slowly back to his farmhouse, past the crops he had spent 3 years nurturing from sterile soil, past the equipment shed where his grandfather's tools still hung on hooks, past the garden where his late wife Elena had planted earth flowers that somehow thrived in alien soil. Inside the house, he opened an old footlocker that hadn't been touched in 15 years. The military gear inside was outdated by current standards, but Marcus had maintained it out of habit. The rifle was cleaned and calibrated. The armor still fit, though it was tighter around his middle than it used to be. The tactical communicator crackled to life when he activated it, automatically syncing with the Colonial Defense Network. Marcus wasn't the only one making such preparations. Across the colony, other veterans were opening similar footlockers. Miners were converting their industrial equipment into weapons. Engineers were reviewing structural plans of every building, calculating blast patterns and defensive positions. Parents were having quiet, terrible conversations with their children about what might happen next. Dr. Seri, Elena Vasquez, Mutera's chief medical officer, was packing emergency supplies when her 10-year-old daughter Maria asked the question she had been dreading. "Mama, are the monsters really coming?" Elena stopped packing and knelt to meet her daughter's eyes. "Yes, mija, the monsters are coming. Are you going to fight them?" "Some of us will fight. Others will help people get away safely. Everyone will do what they need to do. What about me?" Elena pulled her daughter close. "You're going on a big spaceship with Aunt Carmen. You'll be safe. What about you?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. "Mama has to help the people who can't leave yet." Maria nodded with the solemn understanding that children develop in dangerous places. "Okay, but you have to promise to be careful." "I promise to do everything I can to come home to you." It was the most honest answer Elena could give. High above the planet, Captain Zaroth watched her instruments with growing confusion and alarm. The human colony's response to the approaching collector ship was unlike anything in her database of known species reactions. Most civilizations either attempted immediate evacuation or activated whatever defensive systems they possessed. Some tried to negotiate or surrender. The humans were doing all of these things simultaneously while also engaging in behaviors that defied logic. Instead of centralizing their population for more efficient evacuation, they were spreading out. Instead of conserving energy for defensive systems, they were powering up industrial equipment. Instead of stockpiling food and water, they were distributing supplies to individual households. "Computer, analyze human behavioral patterns and provide tactical assessment," Zaroth commanded. "Analysis incomplete. Human actions do not conform to standard survival protocols. Recommend extended observation period." "We don't have time for extended observation. The collectors will arrive within standard rotations." Through her ship's enhanced optical sensors, Zaroth could see individual humans moving with purpose through their settlements. But their purpose seemed counterproductive to survival. They were taking unnecessary risks, making emotional decisions, and displaying the kind of irrational behavior that typically led to species extinction. Yet something about their movements suggested coordination rather than chaos, as if they were following a plan that existed beyond her ability to comprehend. The answer came when her communications array picked up fragments of human transmissions. They weren't speaking in the broken, fear-filled voices typical of species facing the collectors. Their voices were calm, determined, and filled with something that took Zaroth several moments to identify. Anticipation. The humans weren't just preparing to run, or hide, or die. They were preparing for war. On the surface, Marcus Chen finished his preparations and stepped outside his farmhouse one last time. The evacuation transports were visible as bright dots rising toward the stars, carrying the first loads of civilians to safety. He watched them go with satisfaction, knowing that each ship represented thousands of lives that would continue, that would remember, that would carry forward the story of what happened here. His tactical communicator buzzed with incoming traffic. Hundreds of voices checking in from across the colony. Veterans taking positions. Civilians reporting successful evacuations. Engineers confirming that improvised weapons were operational. Marcus smiled and activated his transmitter. "This is Chen. Farm Sector 7. Position secured. Standing by." The responses came back immediately. Rodriguez Administration Complex, standing by. Williams, Mining Station 3, standing by. Patel, Engineering Central, standing by. Vasquez, Medical District, standing by. The list went on.
47 names in total.
47 people who had chosen to remain behind while their friends and families escaped to safety. 47 humans who had just declared war on one of the most feared predator species in the galaxy. As the collector ship continued its approach, Captain Zareth monitored the human communications with growing amazement. These 47 individuals weren't just staying behind to delay the inevitable. They were staying behind because they believed they could win. The confidence in their voices was absolute. Not the false bravado of species trying to mask their fear, but the quiet certainty of predators who had identified prey. Zaratha checked her senses again. The approaching collector vessel was a Harvester-class ship, 3 times the size of her own vessel and armed with enough firepower to level a city. Its crew consisted of approximately 200 of the galaxy's most efficient killers, equipped with personal shields, energy weapons, and centuries of experience in subjugating other species. They were about to face 47 humans with improvised weapons and obsolete military equipment. By every logical measure, this would be a massacre. So why did Zareth find herself checking the weapon systems on her own ship just in case? The collector ship entered orbit as New Terra's sun began to set, casting the world in shades of red and gold that seemed appropriate for what was about to unfold. The massive vessel hung in space like a mechanical moon, its dark hull bristling with sensor arrays and docking ports designed for transporting living cargo. Marcus Chen watched it through his rifle scope from his position in the grain silo. Around him, the colony's automated systems continued their normal operations, creating an illusion of normalcy that wouldn't fool the collectors for long. But it didn't need to fool them for long, just long enough. All positions, this is Chen. He spoke quietly into his communicator. The dance is about to begin. Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're trying to teach them why they should be afraid of us. Copy that, Marcus, came Sarah Kim's voice from the administration building. Final evacuation transport launches in 30 minutes. After that, we're on our own. Roger. All positions stand by for contact. As if responding to his words, the first collector shuttle detached from the main ship and began its descent toward the planet's surface. It was followed by another, then another, until 12 shuttles were making their way through the atmosphere in perfect formation. Marcus chambered around and settled into his firing position. Around the colony, 46 other humans did the same. The collectors were about to learn something that the rest of the galaxy had somehow forgotten. Humans had never been prey. They had always been the thing that other predators learned to avoid, and tonight, that lesson was about to be taught again. The first shuttle touched down in the colony's central plaza just as the last evacuation transport disappeared into the stars above. Collector warriors emerged immediately, their insectoid forms moving with mechanical precision as they began scanning for life signs. They found exactly what they expected. A few dozen humans attempting to hide in defensive positions throughout the colony. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, nothing that would prepare them for what Marcus Chen whispered into his communicator as the first alien stepped into his crosshairs. Welcome to New Terra, boys. Class is now in session. Had nightmares about angry humans. The first shot shattered the morning silence like thunder. Marcus Chen's rifle spoke with the authority of a lifetime spent hunting dangerous game across 3-star systems, and the lead collector's head simply vanished in a spray of chitinous fragments. The massive alien warrior toppled backward, its weapons clattering uselessly to the ground, as its squad mates stood frozen in shock. For the collectors, this was impossible. Prey species didn't attack first. They cowered, they begged, they attempted to bargain or hide. They did not open engagements with precision, headshots delivered from concealed positions. For Marcus Chen, this was Tuesday. Contact front, he called into his communicator, already chambering his next round. 46 targets, Central Plaza. Beginning lesson, Plan Alpha. Across the colony, 46 other humans opened fire simultaneously. The collectors had descended, expecting to face scattered, terrified civilians. Instead, they found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire, from positions that had been prepared with military precision. Every angle of approach was covered. Every piece of cover had been prepared as either a firing position or a killing ground. Every civilian building had been converted into a fortress. Dr. Elena Vasquez had turned the medical center into a nightmare of improvised explosives and choke points. When the first group of collectors breached the main entrance, they found themselves funneled into a narrow corridor where Elena waited with a mining laser she had somehow modified to fire in continuous mode. The beam cut through alien shields and armor like they were made of paper. As the collectors fell, Elena spoke calmly into her communicator. Medical district secure. 7 targets down. Proceeding to secondary positions. 3 kilometers away, Lieutenant Rodriguez had turned the administration building into a sniper's nest. His position on the top floor gave him sightlines across half the colony, and his old military training came flooding back as he began picking off targets with methodical precision. Administration Building 12 confirmed kills, he reported. Collectors are attempting to flank through sectors 4 and 7. Vasquez, Williams, you've got incoming. Copy that, Tommy, came the response from Mining Station 3. Williams here. I see them. Former Staff Sergeant Amanda Williams had spent 6 years fighting in the asteroid belt conflicts, and she had learned some very specific lessons about urban warfare in low-gravity environments. The mining station's industrial equipment made excellent improvised artillery, and the gravity lift she had rigged to launch mining charges was about to teach the collectors some very unpleasant physics lessons. The first salvo of accelerated mining charges struck the flanking collector squad like the wrath of an angry god. The explosions sent alien warriors tumbling through the air, their personal shields overwhelmed by the sheer kinetic force of the impacts. Those who survived the initial blast found themselves facing Williams and her team of miners, who had spent years using cutting lasers and demolition charges in confined spaces. Mining 3 flanking force neutralized, Williams reported with professional satisfaction. 15 targets down. Moving to support medical district. Above the battle, Captain Jarathith watched her instruments with growing disbelief. The human defenders weren't just fighting back, they were winning. Decisively. Computer, run tactical analysis on current engagement. Analysis complete. Collector forces have sustained 43% casualties within first engagement period. Human forces have sustained 0 casualties. Assessment, impossible. Display impossible. Reassess using adaptive parameters. Reassessment complete. Human tactical doctrine does not conform to known patterns. Recommend reclassification of species threat level. Zarath was beginning to reach the same conclusion. On the ground, the battle was evolving into something that defied everything the collectors thought they knew about warfare. Their standard tactics of overwhelming force and intimidation were useless against opponents who refused to be intimidated. Their advanced technology meant nothing against enemies who used improvised weapons with lethal creativity. Their numerical superiority was meaningless when every engagement turned into a carefully planned ambush. Engineer Raj Patel had transformed the power distribution center into a maze of electrified barriers and automated defense systems. When a collector squad attempted to breach the facility, they found themselves facing not just energy weapons, but environmental hazards that turned their own equipment against them. The beautiful thing about quantum power cells, Patel explained cheerfully into his communicator, as he watched collectors stumbling through an electromagnetic field that disrupted their shields, is that they make excellent improvised pulse bombs when you reverse the polarity. Who knew? The explosion that followed removed an entire city block from existence, along with 23 collector warriors who had made the mistake of grouping together for a coordinated assault. Engineering District, 23 confirmed kills, Patel reported. Power grid remains operational. Proceeding to defensive position Beta. The collector field commander was experiencing something unprecedented in its species' long history of conquest, tactical confusion. Its forces were being systematically dismantled by a vastly outnumbered enemy using primitive weapons and impossible strategies. It opened a communication channel to the orbiting ship. Harvester Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. Request immediate reinforcement. Enemy resistance is significant. The response from orbit carried a tone of disbelief. Define significant Alpha. 50% casualties within 2 standard periods. Enemy tactics are unknown. Weapons effectiveness exceeds estimated parameters. You are reporting that 47 primitive humans are defeating 200 collector warriors? The field commander paused before answering. Around it, the sounds of battle continued as its remaining forces attempted to establish defensive positions against enemies who seemed to be everywhere at once. Affirmative. Command. Requesting immediate orbital bombardment of target coordinates. Another pause. Longer this time, Tengiert. Alpha. Bombardment with damage harvesting potential. Continue ground assault. Additional forces deploying now. The field commander closed the channel and surveyed the tactical situation. Half its forces were dead or incapacitated. The humans had established fire superiority despite being outnumbered 4-1. Every attempt to advance resulted in coordinated counterattacks that seemed to anticipate collector movements before they were made. For the first time in its species' recorded history, a collector commander found itself considering retreat. Marcus Chen had moved to his secondary position in the colony's water treatment facility when he received Rodriguez's situation report. The incoming reinforcements would triple the number of collectors on the ground, but Marcus found himself smiling rather than concerned. All positions, this is Chen. He spoke into his communicator. We've got additional students arriving for class. Time to move to lesson plan Beta. Copy that, Marcus. came Sarah Kim's voice from her position in the communication center. Beta protocols are active. All teams proceed to Phase 2 positions. Phase 2 was where things got interesting. The humans had never intended to hold their initial positions indefinitely. Phase 1 was about establishing psychological dominance and teaching the collectors that this would not be a standard harvest operation. Phase 2 was about demonstrating that humans didn't just fight differently, they thought differently. As the second wave of collector shuttles descended, the human defenders simply vanished. The aliens found empty buildings, abandoned positions, and no trace of where their enemies had gone. Their thermal sensors detected nothing. Their motion detectors registered only the settling debris from the earlier battle. Even their advanced tracking systems found no trail to follow. For exactly 17 minutes, New Terra appeared to be completely deserted. Then the real education began. Dr. Vasquez emerged from a maintenance tunnel directly beneath a collector patrol, her modified mining laser carving through alien armor before the squad even realized they were under attack. By the time they turned to respond, she had already vanished back into the tunnel system, leaving only bodies and the lingering smell of ozone. Medical Mobile 3 confirmed kills, she reported calmly. Moving to Intercept Point Charlie. Similar attacks began erupting across the colony. Collectors found themselves facing enemies who appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and disappeared before return fire could be coordinated. The humans had turned the entire settlement into a three-dimensional battlefield, using maintenance tunnels, service ducts, and improvised passages to move unseen between positions. Former Marine sniper Janet Morrison had positioned herself in the colony's waste processing facility, a location so unpleasant that the collectors had marked it as low priority for clearing operations. From her concealed position among the recycling equipment, she had clear shots at three major avenues of approach: waste management, target-rich environment. She reported as her rifle spoke again and again. 8 confirmed kills. Collectors are learning to avoid the main thoroughfares. Good, came Marcus's reply. Drive them into the industrial district. Williams has a surprise waiting. The surprise was a carefully choreographed demonstration of why humans had originally earned their reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous species. Williams had rigged the mining equipment to create what she cheerfully referred to as a kinetic art installation. When the collectors entered the industrial district, they found themselves in a maze of automated systems designed to process asteroid ore. Systems that had been reconfigured to process organic targets. The screaming lasted for exactly 94 seconds. Industrial district secure, Williams reported. 37 confirmed kills. I think we're starting to get their attention. Above the planet, the collector ship commander was receiving reports that challenged everything its species understood about warfare. Ground forces were requesting immediate evacuation. Casualty reports indicated that a force of 200 trained warriors was being systematically eliminated by fewer than 50 primitives using improvised weapons. But the most disturbing part wasn't the tactical defeat, it was the psychological impact. Collector warriors didn't retreat. They didn't panic. They didn't suffer from morale problems. They were purpose-built killing machines with centuries of experience in combat operations. Yet the reports from the surface indicated that surviving ground forces were exhibiting behavior consistent with terror. Harvest a command to all ground units, the ship commander broadcast. Report current tactical assessment. The response came from multiple sources simultaneously. Fragmented voices, panicked breathing, the unmistakable sound of warriors who had encountered something beyond their understanding. They're everywhere. Thermal signatures are false, they're using some kind of masking technology. Request immediate extraction. We can't establish defensive positions. Command, this isn't a harvest operation anymore. This is a hunting ground, and we're the prey. The ship commander closed the channel and accessed the species database. Human military capability was listed as minimal threat. Their technology was classified as primitive. Their tactical doctrine was described as emotionally driven and predictable. Every piece of that data was apparently wrong. Navigation, prepare for immediate departure, the commander ordered. Sir, ground forces are still engaged. Ground forces are compromised. We will not sacrifice the ship to recover forces that have already failed in their primary mission. It was a logical decision, a practical decision, a decision that would have made sense in any normal combat scenario. But as the collector ship began powering its engines for departure, Captain Zaroth detected something on her sensors that made her mandibles click with nervous anticipation. The human defenders had stopped firing. On the surface, Marcus Chen stood in the colony's central plaza, surrounded by the bodies of alien warriors who had learned too late that humanity had never been a prey species. His rifle was still warm in his hands, and around him, 46 other humans emerged from their positions with the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. All positions sound off. Marcus spoke into his communicator. Rodriguez, Administration District, operational. Vasquez, Medical District, operational. Williams, Mining District, operational. Patel, Engineering District, operational. The list continued. 47 names. 47 humans who had just demonstrated that there was a very good reason why the rest of the galaxy had nightmares about angry humans. 0 casualties. Marcus, came Sarah Kim's voice over the communicator. I'm picking up engine signatures from the collector ship. They're preparing to leave. Marcus smiled and looked up at the sky, where the alien vessel hung like a dark moon against the stars. Let them go, Sarah. They've learned what they came here to learn.
Which was?
Marcus shouldered his rifle and began walking toward the administration building, where the work of cleaning up and rebuilding would soon begin.
That we're not prey, he said simply.
We never have been. 6 months after the Battle of New Terra, as historians would later call it, Captain Zarath stood before the assembled Galactic Council in chambers that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across 1,000 star systems. The crystalline walls reflected her nervous energy back at her in patterns of light that spoke of uncertainty and growing dread. The council members represented 47 different species, each more advanced than humanity by centuries or millennia. The Vexani with their matter manipulation abilities. The gaseous Nephilim who existed in multiple dimensions. The ancient architects who had built the hyperspace network that connected the galaxy. All of them now focused their attention on a recording that had changed everything they thought they understood about the cosmic order. This footage was taken from my observation vessel during the collector incident at the human colony designated New Terra, Zarath announced, her translator rendering her clicking speech into the common galactic language. What you are about to see challenges every assumption we have made about this species since first contact. The holographic display activated, showing the surface of New Terra as the collector shuttles descended. To most of the council members, the initial scenes appeared routine, a primitive species about to be harvested by one of the galaxy's apex predators. They had seen similar recordings hundreds of times before. Then Marcus Chen fired the first shot. The council chamber fell silent as they watched 47 humans systematically dismantle a force of 200 collector warriors. The tactical brilliance was undeniable. The coordination was flawless. The complete reversal of expected outcomes was terrifying. High Councillor Vexani, primary whose species had dominated galactic politics for 3 millennia, was the first to speak. This recording has been verified as authentic? Multiple independent sources confirm its accuracy, Zarath replied. Additionally, we have testimonies from the surviving collector forces. The collectors provided testimony? The question came from Councillor Nephilim 7, whose gaseous form shimmered with what could only be described as shock. In the entire recorded history of their species, the collectors had never retreated from a ground engagement. They certainly had never provided testimony about tactical failures. The surviving collector commander submitted a formal report to their hierarchy. That report was illuminating. Zarath activated a secondary display showing text translated from the harsh angular script of the collector language. The words that appeared caused several council members to physically recoil. Species reclassification request. Designation human to be upgraded from Category 7, Primitive Prey, to Category 1, Apex Predator. Recommend immediate cessation of all harvest operations in human-occupied systems. Reason. Tactical and psychological superiority demonstrated. Ground forces experienced unprecedented casualty ratios and mission failure. Request additional notation. This species appears to consider combat a recreational activity. The final line of the report drew what might have been laughter from species capable of humor and existential dread from those who weren't. Personal assessment from Ground Commander, we are not the monsters in this galaxy. We never were. Councillor Architect Churchery, whose species had observed galactic conflicts for longer than most civilizations had existed, spoke in harmonics that suggested deep contemplation. The implications of this report extend beyond a single tactical engagement. If humans can defeat collectors in ground combat, what does this suggest about their overall military potential? That's exactly what we need to discuss, Zarath replied. Because the New Terra incident was not an isolated event. She activated a galaxy-wide display showing reported conflicts across human space over the past 6 months. Red markers indicated engagements where humans had faced various threats. The pattern that emerged was consistent and disturbing. 17 separate incidents involving human forces, Zarath explained. Pirates, slavers, territorial disputes with aggressive species, and 3 separate encounters with collector harvest fleets. The humans have achieved tactical victory in every single engagement. That's statistically impossible, protested Councillor Mollusk 9, whose species specialized in probability mathematics. No single species achieves universal victory rates. There are always losses, miscalculations, overwhelming force disparities, unless, interrupted Architect Tertiary, we have fundamentally misunderstood what they are. The chamber fell silent as the full implications of that statement settled over the assembled representatives. For millennia, the galaxy had operated on a carefully balanced hierarchy of species. The ancient and powerful civilizations maintained order. The middle-tier species handled commerce and diplomacy. The primitive species were either ignored or, in the case of aggressive primitives, managed by apex predators like the collectors. Humans had been classified as primitive because their technology was recent and their political structure was chaotic. No one had considered that they might represent something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that was simultaneously primitive and apex predator. We need to see more, declared Vexani Primary. Full tactical analysis of their combat doctrine. Zarath nodded and activated a new series of recordings. This is footage from the Battle of Kepler Station, where a human merchant convoy was attacked by Sicarian raiders. The Sicarans were known throughout the galaxy as accomplished warriors whose martial culture had dominated 3-star systems for centuries. Their attack on the human convoy should have been a straightforward robbery followed by the enslavement of survivors. Instead, the Council watched as the human merchants transformed their civilian vessels into improvised warships in under 4 minutes. Cargo containers became kinetic weapons. Atmospheric processors became chemical weapon dispensers. Navigation sensors became targeting systems for weapons that shouldn't have been possible to construct without specialized military equipment. The Sicarian raiders found themselves facing opponents who treated combat like a creative engineering exercise. Within 20 minutes, the raiding fleet had been completely destroyed, and the human convoy continued on its original course as if nothing unusual had happened. The most disturbing part, Zarath noted, is the post-battle communication from the human convoy leader. The recording played in the chamber. Control, this is merchant vessel Good Fortune. We've resolved the piracy issue. No delays expected for our delivery schedule. Oh, and you might want to update the safety advisories for this sector. The Sicarian problem has been permanently addressed. The casual tone suggested that defeating a notorious raider fleet was a minor inconvenience rather than a life-threatening combat engagement. They're not warriors, observed Councillor Nephilim. 7. There's something else entirely. What else? Asked Vexani Primary. The answer came from an unexpected source. Councillor Mollusk 9, whose species had spent millennia analyzing probability distributions across galactic conflicts, spoke in mathematical harmonics that translated into something approaching awe. They're universal adaptive predators. Every species in this galaxy has evolved to occupy a specific niche. We manipulate matter. The Nephilim exist in multiple dimensions. The Architect's build. The Collector's harvest. Each of us represents peak efficiency in our chosen specialization. Mollusk 9 paused, its mathematical consciousness processing implications that defied conventional analysis. Humans haven't specialized in anything. They've generalized into everything they can. Outthink engineers, outfight warriors, outmaneuver pilots, and outadapt species that have had millions of years more evolutionary time. They're not the best at any single thing. They're adequate at everything, which makes them superior at the one thing none of us considered: rapid adaptation to novel situations. The mathematical truth of that statement sent ripples of unease through the chamber. There's more, Zarath continued. We need to discuss the psychological impact. She activated recordings from various species who had encountered humans in combat situations. Sicarian survivors speaking in shaken voices about enemies who fought like the universe owed them money. Collector warriors requesting reassignment to safer duties after ground engagements with human forces. Even peaceful merchant species reporting unease when human vessels appeared on their sensors. Fear, explained Zarath. For the first time in recorded galactic history, multiple apex predator species are exhibiting fear responses to contact with another species. That would explain the economic disruptions, noted Councillor Commerce Alpha, whose species managed much of the galaxy's trade networks. Shipping routes are being altered to avoid human space. Several species have suspended trade negotiations. The collector hegemony has implemented what they call strategic redeployment, but what appears to be a complete withdrawal from any system with established human presence. Architect Tertiary's harmonics shifted to something approaching concern. We may have misidentified the fundamental nature of this species. The question now becomes, what do we do with this information? The debate that followed would last for 17 standard days and reshape galactic politics for the next century. Some council members argued for preemptive action, containing or controlling humanity before they became a threat to galactic stability. Others suggested isolation, quarantining human space until the species matured or destroyed themselves. But it was Vexani Primary who proposed the solution that would ultimately be adopted. We treat them as what they are, the galaxy's newest apex predator species. We establish diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than condescension. We offer them membership in the Galactic Council not as a primitive species to be managed, but as equals who have earned their place through demonstrated capability. And if they refuse? Asked Nephilim. Then we hope they remain friendly to the species who are smart enough to offer. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but the resolution passed. Within a month, the first formal diplomatic contact between humanity and the Galactic Council would be initiated. The message would be simple, direct, and carefully worded to avoid any suggestion of condescension or threat. On New Terra, Marcus Chen received the news while working in his rebuilt grain silo. The crops had grown back stronger than ever in soil that had been enriched by the decomposed remains of collector warriors. Elena Vasquez had returned from ensuring her daughter's safe evacuation and was back to managing the medical center. Tommy Rodriguez had been promoted to planetary defense coordinator. Amanda Williams was training new colonists in what she cheerfully called applied creative engineering. Life had returned to normal, with the minor exception that no hostile forces had approached New Terra since the battle. Word had spread through the galaxy's criminal networks. The humans were not to be disturbed. Marcus was reviewing agricultural reports when Sarah Kim approached with a priority communication from orbit. The message was from something called the Galactic Council, and it began with words that no human colony had ever received. To the government and people of New Terra. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity as a sovereign apex species and requests the honor of opening diplomatic relations between our civilizations as equals. Marcus read the message twice, then handed it back to Sarah with a smile. "What should I tell them?" she asked. "Tell them we appreciate the recognition, but we already knew what we were. And..." Marcus looked out over the fields where human crops grew on alien soil, where families lived and worked and built futures among the stars, where people like Elena and Tommy and Amanda had chosen to stay and fight when the monsters came calling. Tell them we're always happy to make new friends. But also mention that our friends don't usually need to worry about the kinds of problems that require creative solutions. Sarah laughed. "I think they're beginning to figure that out." Above them, Captain Zarath monitored the exchange from her observation vessel. The humans had accepted the Council's diplomatic overture with the same casual confidence they applied to everything else. No ceremony, no grand pronouncements, no requests for special treatment or compensation for past slights. Just a simple acknowledgement that they were willing to be neighbors with anyone who approached them with respect. As she prepared her final report on the human species, Zariath reflected on the most important lesson she had learned during her months of observation. The galaxy hadn't gained a new threat. It had gained a new guardian species, one that would ensure predators like the Collectors would think twice before hunting the innocent. The monsters were still out there, lurking in the dark between stars, but now the galaxy had something it had never possessed before, monsters of its own who had chosen to be heroes. And that, Zaratha realized as she watched the peaceful colony below, made all the difference. Her final report to the Council would be brief and direct, in the style she had learned to appreciate during her time observing humans. Mission complete. The galaxy just became a safer place.